And I want to welcome everyone, all the United States Serrans, friends of Serra, Serrans from around the world, to this Serra Meets. And I'm not supposed to say this, but I'm going to say it. It's our 47th Serra Meets. So we've been doing this consistently since December the 12th, 2020. And we're still going strong. I'm your host. I'm Dr. Ann Rote, and I'm the president of the U.S. Serra Council, and I'm a member of the Lafayette in Indiana Serra Club. So our keynote speaker today, you're in for a treat. It's Dr. MOIRA McQueen, and she is president of the board of trustees for the Serra International. She currently lives in Toronto, Canada, but she's got this gorgeous Scottish accent. So that's not a Canadian accent that you're actually hearing. She travels throughout the world promoting our Serra mission. And I mean, it's such a privilege for us to have her with us tonight. She was a lawyer before becoming the director of the Canadian Catholic Bioethics Institute. She teaches moral theology at St. Michael's at the University of Toronto, and she's a member of the Vatican's International Theological Commission. She and her husband, Matthew, have 7 children, 11 grandchildren. She's been president of the Canadian Council of Serra, and she's the founding president of the Serra Club of Halton and is proud to serve on the board of Serra International. Now, that's the official bio. But what you don't know is she is just one of the nicest people I've ever met. She is very, very professional and very willing to listen. And she's just been a godsend to me as the president of the U.S. Council to have someone like MOIRA to work with. So her talk tonight is entitled Our International Strategic Plan. And she's going to talk to you about the strategic plan for Serra International. Dr. MOIRA McQueen, welcome to Serra Meets.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. Just a minor point, I guess I'm not president of the Serra Canada Council anymore, but I was. And we have 12 grandchildren so far. So those are the sort of things that change, of course, as life goes on. But thank you very much, and it's also a pleasure to work with you. And it's a pleasure for me to be here tonight on Serra Meets. And as Anne said, I'm going to talk about the strategic plans. So when people talk about a plan, sometimes it sounds like a little bit of a turn off because, you know, it's planning is something that isn't always that easy to do. I think when we're planning for Serra, it's a completely different attitude. And this plan came, as most of you know, from a meeting representing the 3 parts of Serra. It was a really large meeting. There were many voices. So many people made wonderful contributions. Let's put it this way, although it looks as if it's all organized, I would say it's very much in the formation stage still, because like all plans, it could change as time goes on and circumstances change and people have different ideas. The national councils have already shared some of their vision about what they will do with the plan, how they will implement it in terms of all of us, of course, sharing the same mission. And that, I think, is what's so important about Serra and about the plan in itself. Everything is for the good of Serra. So even something that says strategic plan, it's all for the good of Serra. And for me, that is the heart of it. It's meant to encompass a long time, as you can see, from 2024 to 2035. But tonight, I'm really just going to talk about the beginning part for this year, 2024 to 2025. So the overall vision of this plan is, it's a mighty one, become recognized as the worldwide resource for supporting religious vocations. And that, of course, is quite a challenge to be the worldwide resource. But it reflects, again, what Serra does. It reflects the mission very much. It gives us that vision of what we're aiming for. And it isn't just to be recognized, oh, isn't Serra wonderful because it's a worldwide resource. The point really is that as a worldwide resource, we would be reaching more and more people, and therefore, we hope, promoting more and more religious vocations. So the vision itself is really, again, aimed for the good of Serra. And we decided at that meeting that the overarching goal, so just for this particular session of 2024 to 2027, would be the one that everybody already recognizes, which is to continue to foster a culture of vocations to the ministerial priesthood and consecrated life in parishes, schools, and families. So the basis of the plan, and maybe not surprisingly, isn't really anything that new, but I think it's aimed at a reinvigoration of what we're doing in terms of this overarching goal of Serra, which is certainly to foster a culture of vocations. So the plan has 6 goals, actually, and the first 3 main ones are the ones that nearly everybody has sort of latched onto at the beginning, because that makes sense. And also because the second 3 goals, the second group of 3, more or less mesh with these first 3, because they're more about communications, both externally and internally. And of course, nothing can be done without good communications. So the first one is to increase awareness of Serra at all levels. And the second one is improve the engagement of our clubs at the parish level. And then the third one is to expand support for Serra clubs. The other 4, the fourth one is to improve communications at all levels of Serra, internally and externally. Really, the 5th one is about internal communications and ways to improve the organization. And the 6th goal, the 6th main goal, is to increase Serra clubs globally. And it seems to me that every time I look at the plan or talk about the plan, so much comes back to the first one, to increase awareness of Serra at all levels. Because to expand support, to win over new clubs, to win over new members, they have to know about Serra. So the communications is at an all-time high in importance level in terms of that increasing awareness. So many times, I think everybody agrees with this. We talk about how many people will still say, well, what's Serra? Can you tell me about Serra? What do you do in Serra? So there's a lot to do, even with this very first one, increase awareness of Serra at all levels. So I did a little exercise today myself about increasing the level of awareness and what I'm calling to make Serra better known. So because I'm based in Canada here, I looked up Vocations Canada, which is the website for all the religious congregations in Canada. And there's a great number of religious congregations and they're all listed. So I key in search for Serra, not one word. Serra's not on it. So I sent a request to the vocations director. I happen to know her. She's a religious sister. She spoke at the Toronto Convention a few years ago, and asked her if we could be on that list as a body, a lay apostolate that's aggregated to a Vatican dicastery. And I mean, it's a very small step, but it really surprised me because we've had a lot of contact with different members of their organization that we're not even mentioned. So then I thought, okay, I'll look at our Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops. And as far as I can see, and I could be wrong, but the last time Serra was mentioned was in November 2011. Again, we've had a lot of contact with Canadian bishops, and many of them have spoken at our conferences. Cardinal Collins is our Episcopal advisor nationally and internationally. Not that I'm saying it's his responsibility, but it's really our responsibility, and there's nothing very much about Serra on that. So I looked at my own diocese. I work in Toronto, but I actually live in the Diocese of Hamilton. And the only thing I could find about Serra was my own bishop congratulating me in becoming president of Serra International, but nothing about the organization. So I have to do something about that. Not to belabor the point, but I then looked at the US Conference of Catholic Bishops, and there's a lot about St. Junipero Serra, and not very much about Serra International, though it may, or even Serra US. It may be in other parts of the website that I've missed, but in terms of the search, it didn't come up really fast. And then the dicastery for the clergy, whom Serra International, many from the board, foundation, etc., visited the dicastery in October, as Serra International does every year. And, we're aggregated to that congregation, dicastery, sorry now, but there's no mention of Serra. So at this level, and the levels, these are people whom we work with, whom we know, and I wasn't finding too much in terms of publicity, if you like, or recognition of Serra International. So I wouldn't be surprised if the same applies in other countries. And so again, there's a lot of work to be done just in making Serra better known, just in visibility. Just moving on to some of the goals. Some of the reports back from the national councils were really good, and so many I couldn't possibly talk about them all tonight. It would take far too long. But from Australia and New Zealand, they took a more generic approach when they were looking at the plan, and said that they would work with the clubs to tailor the plan to their needs, to the available resources, which they still had to determine, of course, and that they would have a one-page plan, very succinct, and those plans would be updated regularly, they're saying annually, and then if tasks are done, they'll be removed. If anything else is to be added, it will be done, and new priorities and tasks would be scheduled. I mentioned them because they came up with this one-page plan, which could be very useful, say for clubs when this all filters down to the club level, because so far on the whole it has not. It's really still with the national councils and just beginning to filter down. So just very basic, what's happening now, where do we want to go? They talk about quick gains, they talk about targeting priorities, and that's what we have to do. When people look at the international plan, the strategic plan in one go, it can be rather overwhelming. But the whole point is it's not expected to be done in one go. We're talking about 2024 to 2035 and moving along the different parts of the plan as they apply in our either local or national area. It's not as if every single thing has to be done by everybody. In fact, many of the tasks that are contained and identified in the plans are already being done. So there's a lot that's not new, and there's a lot of scope for people to come up with what they actually want to do in their particular area with the resources that are available to them. So this is just the Hong Kong's first draft that they had sent, and these are just examples of what they said they would do as far as goal 1 is concerned, about making Serra better known. So maintaining contact with the Bishops' Committee on vocations, supporting the role of the Bishops' Committee. There's only one club in Hong Kong, so they will have a very direct relationship with vocations committees and the bishop too. And then they would send the Serra magazine to every diocesan and religious order vocations director. So things like that are very, very useful in terms of achieving that visibility again. The US councils, their initial plan that they sent back was very clear, very well done. And under goal 2, where we're talking about engaging parishes, so Serra at the parish level, this is why goal 2 is outlined as it is here, targeting education and being very specific about what they would use in Serra Mission, the 7 Greats booklet, possibly using Ignite training for a group of parishes, and also possibly using the Galilee program. So very clearly using resources that are already there, and I know have been implemented in many, many parishes in the US, but I'm sure there's probably a lot more still to be done there as well. But you can see how clearly it was laid out under goal 2. The US Council also, under goal 2, talked about education content, and I like the way they use the word targeting. So very goal directed. They would target Catholic schools, religious ed, faith formation programs using the content that's listed here. And they would also target school principals, etc., as you can see, religious ed directors, and their approaches would be school by school, parish by parish, as long as there was consent to do that. So very clear in terms of what they were going to do, but also very clear on how they were going to do it, because that sometimes is a bit of a stumbling block for many people. I just want to mention a very different approach to Goal 2 in terms of, Serra being involved at the parish level, because many of us, do either try to form vocations committee or do pulpit announcements to get memberships or invite parishioners to holy hours. And these are all laudable and have to continue, and they work as well. When we were at the Italian Council meeting in October, they invited people to a very sort of big concert that was held in the cathedral, or it was actually held in La Verna in a special sanctuary quite near Arezzo. And it was an amazing, it was a religious concert in terms of the type of singing, the actual program itself. But they told us that they do this in the town of Arezzo, and they use one of the major churches that they have there, and they invite the public to come as well. And they also have lectures on probably religious type topics, but they open that to the public. So it's not just a case of an internal sort of ask a few friends. They're really reaching out, not so much at the parish level, but at a wider public level, in terms, again, raising the visibility of Serra and using their more cultural approach, you might say, to do so. And it seemed, their Archbishop was there, as they're obviously clearly supported very well by the clergy. And so to me, this is a very different way of doing something that could certainly raise the profile of Serra, but have people actually involved as well. They do art contests in the schools. They do essay contests in the schools. They had a songwriting contest for seminarians that I think it's on their website. I'd need to double check that. But they have some really fresh and creative ideas in terms of being involved at the parish level. And as I'm saying, a step beyond the parish level and the public level. So it's very, very open and very goal-directed. Goal 3 about supporting Serra clubs hasn't really garnered so much response yet, which is why I'm calling it Lonely Goal 3. But really, I think this becomes the work of Serra International and the office staff in terms of listening to what the clubs are actually asking for, listening to see what they do need help with. One of the points that I feel very strongly about is that everyone should have a voice, and there has to be some way of having that voice, heard. And so there has to be a way of channeling what people are saying. So the usual way is from the clubs upwards through districts or regions to national councils and perhaps to Serra International. But I think there is a lot that could be done to support the clubs if the upper levels, so to speak, were aware of what was actually needed. And I think we could borrow the model of synodality a little in learning to listen to what people are saying at the club level and somehow making that possible for them to feel they are really being heard. I believe sometimes that national councils sometimes don't feel that they are being heard as much as they maybe should be or think they should be. And of course, there's a little bit of a two-sided approach there. What you can only know if there's something that could be dealt with if you actually hear that coming through. So more work, I think, or more response from VPs at different levels, I think could maybe enable that to be a bit more. I think there could be more diocesan support. I think areas that do have strong diocesan support are very fortunate. In some areas, I think we maybe have to work a little bit harder in explaining who we are, how we are actually helping dioceses in general by promoting vocations. But maybe we could have a little bit more publicity and support from the dioceses themselves. I'd written here that ScansPAC seemed to be more focused on the clubs, and they're the only ones that I could really identify who seem to be starting at that level and not what I'm talking about sometimes, the out there, inviting the public level. But I think all aspects are really needed here. I think evaluations are that these are just so essential when there's any kind of planning. First of all, I mean, we are stating our goals with a strategic plan. We do have those goals, and we have a lot of tasks outlined, and the rest of the tasks are left to the clubs to determine what they're going to do and how they will do it. But a very important part is to say, did we manage it? Did we get this done? What have we achieved? What did we do that was successful? What happened and why did some things not work? Can we change that the next time? I mean, people are doing evaluations always. Anytime I do a parish program with some of the programs I deal with out of Serra, there's always an evaluation at the end to see how the sessions went, what could be improved, what could be left out, those kinds of questions. I mean, they're pretty standard. They're not just for Serra, but they make sense, I think, with any group that's talking about goals, you know. I used this quote in when I was talking about the plan at the convention in New Orleans, because it was from Bob Marley, and I was saying I never thought I would ever be quoting Bob Marley in any kind of context, far less a Serra context. But I really liked this line when I read it about some people have hopes and dreams and some people have ways and means. But, you know, we need both is really the bottom line. So the vision, the dreamers, and the doers, if you like, and the evaluators as well. So the next steps for Serra International, anyway, our long-range planning committee will be contacting the councils again, as they did during last year, with the first steps for talking about the plan. The hope then is that the councils will encourage districts, regions, etc., and that the clubs will start discussions and that reports will be sent. Again, to find out what exactly is going on for the good of Serra, I think is really important, because it's always amazing to me when I do read what people are doing or somebody else's newsletter, what's been done in a specific part that we're not doing, what we could borrow, what we could give to them. That sharing of practices is just so, I mean, to me, again, what people do is really amazing. And without a kind of report or pulling them all together, sometimes we're completely unaware of the good work that's actually being done for Serra. So that to me is, again, as I said, something very important. What are our priorities? Have we achieved them? What was successful, unsuccessful, and lessons for the next stage? Underlying it all, and the second group of 3 goals that are about communications, essentially, I think are really very important. Greg Schweitz actually had devised a Serra International board exit survey, and he asked board members who were leaving because their term of office was up, just to tell, you know, what did you contribute, what did you learn, what would you like to have heard done, what would you know, what you want to see done in the future, were there any problems, you know, what were the good points, all those kinds of questions. And one board member said afterwards he'd never been asked to do anything like that before the whole time he had been on the board, and he found it extremely valuable. And I agree, I think that's the sort of thing that can help all of us. That, and I mentioned earlier about every council, every club should have a voice. And sometimes it's not heard. And I think sometimes people know it's not being heard, and that can be difficult. So I do think that ongoing communications through vice presidential reports at all levels would help to make all of our participation in Serra more meaningful if we feel that we're being heard and we're continuing. And I just use this one to finish up, because this is like how not to persuade people either to participate in tasks or participate in writing reports or in anything that seems as if it's going to be work. And it's just saying, you know, I'm not bossy, I'm asking you to do something. It's just I have skills. The bit about understand, though, is a little bit brash. But anyway, that's this is the this particular picture is something my husband thinks is underlines, yeah, you know, bossiness is not the point. Everything is for the good of Serra, and to sort of persuade people that that in fact is what they're doing, to me is the undercurrent of every strategic plan. So I'm going to stop there and hope I didn't go on too long, Anne, because I was not timing it.
No, that was wonderful. That was wonderful.